So after having come to this point, we will say for the moment that a soul, a being, has gone into the other life and is more or less faced by the intricate machinery of its own morality. The individual begins to understand the relationship between a divine reality and a human unreality. The entity begins to realize a little bit of why it was born in the body it has just left behind. It was born because of unfinished business. It was born because it has not outgrown the restrictions which are imposed upon mortal creatures. Therefore, in a period when gradually the lower vehicles of embodiment are dispensed, gradually, little by little, the vital body is returned to the vital fountains of life. The emotional body returns to the emotional realms from which the substance of which all such bodies are fashioned. And the mental body disintegrates or vanishes back into the universal mind. That which is left, however, is soul awareness. Then, perhaps for the first time in a cycle of embodiment, the inner life and the outer life have a strange kind of meaning. Before the ego, personal self, fades away, it becomes suddenly aware of the reason for itself. It suddenly becomes aware of the destiny for which it was intended. And in that vision, which arises from internal recollection rather than from external preachments, the individual suddenly realizes his place in the plan. He knows why he went through what he did go through. He knows why there is more yet to be done. Now, in the very primitive eras of our evolution, and among the less evolved people even now, this after-death circumstance is considerably shortened. It is very little to be used for rational purposes. The individual is a child, like a school child, who died before it got out of kindergarten. Therefore, a great deal of the material with which the more evolved person has to deal with does not confront this other individual. But he is not considered, nor is he impoverished for lack of it. He is part of the same cycle, but the winds are tempered to the shorn lamb. That which the individual does not know and cannot know, he is not held responsible for. But he is also on the same ladder, gradually climbing, gradually rising day by day. And we see how vital this is today in our world affairs. We are living in a world now that is filled with pain. It is filled with all kinds of perversities, exiles, victims, prisoners, martyrs. These are all common things. And yet in the great plan of things, there cannot be any real evil. All these things are part of a karmic reaction upon body. But the life locked within that body is immortal, eternal, and inevitably destined to be perfect. And that is just as true of the most humble, helpless, hungered, dying human being as it is of the greatest sage. And it is sometimes more true of those who in simple ways have done the best they could than the more advanced ones who have constantly compromised their convictions for the benefits of profit. But back now into the pattern. Here the individual faces his life. He sees, as is sometimes reported of the dying person in the ocean, that in a moment his whole life passes before his eyes while he is drowning. The Pythagoreans had the same concept in their meditational disciplines. It was their labor every day to try to understand the meaning of what happened, why they were to blame for problems, how they could solve those problems, what they should have done instead of what they did do. And this type of discipline is much more valuable to the unfolding soul than some platitudes on a religious level. But in any event, the entity, now in its pure condition, living only as it is, its achievements and everything that are part of it. It looks down, perhaps, in some mysterious way not in physical dimension, but in a certain psychological sense. And it sees where it came from. And it looks over itself as it might look over a stranger. And it looks over the self and it says, well, I didn't do too well. I could have done better. Maybe I could have done worse. But looking back in a perspective, as the Pythagorean points out, the individual could see and can see what the consequences would have been had he made different decisions. If he had made decisions that did not violate law, he would have no karma to problem him. If he had made those growth emotions that nature intended, he would then move into the next higher step painlessly and without inconvenience. But every good thing has to struggle for life in this world, and corruption seems to be the favorite. But so this under higher thinking, the individual begins to contemplate his future existence. So, according to the old teachings, the little souls do not contemplate. They take what comes next, because it is the only thing they can do. But there is nothing that happens to them next that is dangerous to their ultimate growth. It is that they have not yet awakened to the degree where they may make certain decisions for themselves. But as life evolves, as people grow, as the intensities of effort get greater, we find many divisions and levels of human beings. We find many who try very hard to do what is right. Some make mistakes. We also find many people who start out in life with noble purposes, but some old karma catches up with them and gives them a world of trouble. All around we see this process of growing, which is, of course, a divine institution, for we are all in the school of the Holy Spirit. And having come to certain decisions, and having achieved at certain levels, and having advanced certain special forms of knowledge, as in law, or in medicine, or architecture, music, all these things, the entity, the subjective part of the individual that did not die with the body, begins to realize that there are things that it needs to do. And it needs to do them to take care of old business, and it needs to do them to advance new business that is appropriate and necessary. Gradually, the entity itself becomes aware of its own place in the law of rebirth and karma. And having attained to this degree, there is an increasing privilege of the entity, or the soul itself, to employ its own energies to help this being to select a proper destiny. So if the individual has a bad karmic lesson, he might be an individual who avoided the karma from this, or perhaps died and affected this release and thought it was over. But it wasn't. It's never over till the debt is paid. But he looks and he says, well, that looks like it's a little unfinished business that is going to hold me back. That will always be there till I solve it. I had a grudge against Jones. I'll always have that grudge until I stop grudging. He also says, I always work too hard for profit and not enough for principle. It's about time to take these changes. Another says, I was selfish. I sacrificed the love of my family to some gain for myself. I owe my family a debt. And little by little, the entity can choose, and often does choose, at least part of the burden it is going to carry the next time it comes. Now, when it gets back in the body and faces what it chose, it may not be very happy about it. It is already no longer clear. It no longer sees everything. It is all covered and murky now, and there's nothing but an unpleasant situation. Now, again, that situation may be too much. The individual may not be able to face it, so he evades it again. But even if he evades it 99 times, he will ultimately have to pay it. On the other hand, he will begin to learn that the things he does well have a great importance. We must realize in karma that it is not all punishment. It is consequence. It is reward. It is that which is the natural result of things done. A great deal of karma is very beautiful. We all have wonderful experiences which are the result of having earned them. Salvation must be earned. The Arabian Nights says happiness must be earned. In everything in life, the good must be earned. And we are always earning. But if we earn good, we are happy. If we earn evil, we are punished. But in every case, the earning is equal by what is earned. So if we have the right to say, we can say, well, I did pretty well in that last life, and looking back over half a dozen more, I did fairly well. Well, I was respectable. But there were things that I never could see straight. And one of these, and they all caused me to break up my home without realizing what I was doing. I thought I was right, but from this larger perspective, I see that I wasn't right. Well, I guess I'd better put another home on my list and try this time to do it right. So those who have reached a certain degree of growth have the privilege of a certain amount of selection in the things which they're going to do next. They have reached the point in their own development, however, by that time, that will not permit them to keep on to choosing only what they like. They will choose what is next. And why, as a result of choosing what is next, they come back here in a very mixed condition. And the society as we know it and see it here today is a consequence of such a situation. We are here, we do not know why. Situations arise, we do not know why. We either do something with them or we fumble them badly, do not know why. And so it goes on until the next embodiment. But it is all in the end going to result in an individual who has become capable of universal experience, who has become capable of universal wisdom, and under so conditions becomes gradually and inevitably one of the great teachers of humanity, and also later it becomes the foundation of new worlds that we know nothing of. But all of it is growth, and it is all circumscribed by divine love. There is no hate in it anywhere. There is no injustice. The courts of men may fall and fail, but the courts of heaven never fail. And what we sometimes feel to be a tough deal, and it will be a tough deal from the limited experience factor of objectivity. But if we are able to go inside, we will find that it is a proper deal. Now, it is not necessary to always wait for the next embodiment to solve some of these problems that are still obscure. The only way to solve an outside problem is to go inside. Brute thought and argument does nothing. We have to go inside and in quietude call upon the best resources that we have to solve even the commonplace incidents of life. Between incarnations, it's the same thing. We are forever laboring to fulfill the destiny, be ye perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect. We have to do this because it is perfection only that is safe, not only for the individual but for society. All things must do it right or troubles will never end. Ulterior motives are the most dangerous things in the world, and there is nothing that can bring an individual back with a lot of unpaid bills than a series of ulterior motives while he is alive. Nearly all moral religions have to do with a code, the Ten Commandments and things like that. They try to teach people to be good enough